Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Fiber Broadband Association's Fiber for Breakfast. We're now in our 8th episode of 2023. Before we kick off, I'd like to thank Wesco, the platinum sponsor for Fiber Breakfast, and our gold sponsors, Nokia and Vetro. On Friday, the FCC submitted a report to Congress on the impact of the Broadband Interagency Coordination Act. This directs the FCC to work with NTIA and RUS on broadband deployment with a whole of government approach. In the report, the agencies say the agreement has proven effective in improving interagency coordination and facilitating efficient use of broadband deployment. The report also has some recommendations. It says the agencies should continue to work together and promote more visibility on their efforts. They need to revisit the agreement to establish a process with a minimum time period for the agencies review proposed funding before committing. Also, the broadband agencies should explore how to better support current funding maps and the mapping efforts with data from state and local entities, no surprise there. And then also to establish a process that expedites adding more agencies to this memorandum of understanding. On the NTIA front, the Build America, Buy America, what we like to call BABA requirement, continues to be a hot topic in the industry. We expect the NTI Middle Mile Awards to be announced as early as March 1st, but we still haven't seen any BABA waivers yet. That said, NTI has been pretty clear that whatever waivers may or may not be granted for the middle mile, those waivers will not necessarily be applicable to the BEAD program. So comments on OMB's revised guidance for grants and agreements to support Build America, Buy America are due to OMB by March 13th. So that's coming up here in a couple weeks. So speaking of NTI, I had a great discussion with Evan Feynman, the BEAD director for NTI, last Wednesday on the Fiber Broadband Association's Where's the Funding series. Evan was really open and direct, and he provided just a great deal of critical insights on the BEAD program. So if you miss it, I highly recommend you watch the replay, which can be found on our website under webinars. This brings us to today's Fiber for Breakfast session with Brad Moline, the President and CEO of ALLO Communications. We'll be discussing how fiber is changing the lives of the youth in Lincoln, Nebraska. But before we formally introduce our guest, I'd like to introduce Trish Ehlers of the team, who will be walking us through some housekeeping items.
Thanks, Gary, and good morning to everyone who's joined us today. Before I go over a few logistical items, I'd like to once again thank the platinum sponsor of Fiber for Breakfast, Wesco, and our gold sponsors, Nokia and Vetro. Now, if you'd all keep in mind that everyone is in listen mode only, to ask a question, you can just type it into the question box located within your control panel on the right side of your screen. We will host a Q&A session with Brad at the end of today's session. The presentation is being recorded and will be available to members only on FBA's website within 24 hours. You can find the recording in the Events tab under the Fiber for Breakfast drop-down option. At the conclusion of today's presentation, you'll be prompted to complete a brief feedback survey. We really appreciate your input, so if you could take a minute to do so, that would be great. I'll now pass it back to Gary to introduce our panelists and get us started. Gary?
Thanks, Trish, and good morning. I'm Gary Bolton, the President and CEO of the Fiber Broadband Association. Last week on Fiber Breakfast, we heard from Josh Snowhorn, the CEO of Quantum Loop, to discuss fiber to the hyperscale data centers lessons learned. I found it absolutely fascinating to hear Josh talk about how he's building this massive 43-mile fiber ring connecting Ashburn, Virginia, and Frederick, Maryland, that's composed of 34 2-inch ducts with the ability to accommodate 6912 fiber trunks with total capacity of 235,000. That's 235,000 strands of fiber. I mean, can you imagine? Even imagine trying to splice the 6912 fiber in the trunk. Anyway, it was a great discussion, so check out the replay if you missed that. Today on Fiber for Breakfast, our session is with Brad Moline, the President and CEO of ALLO Communications, to discuss how fiber is changing the lives of the youth in Lincoln, Nebraska. That's really what fiber is all about. It's about people and changing their lives for the future. So Brad is the president and CEO. He founded ALLO Communications in 2003 in Imperial, Nebraska. ALLO is a telecommunications company offering fiber, telephone, long distance, broadband, internet, and television to the residents and businesses and government entities. ALLO provides communication services to 35 cities across Nebraska, Colorado, Arizona, totaling approximately 989,000 in population. Previously, Brad was the Senior Vice President of Finance and the Chief Financial Officer, a driving force behind the exponential growth of Birch Telecom in Kansas City. You know, I always think of take a bite out of the bells. Is that what the Birch was? And what was your dog's name?
Buddy.
Buddy, that's right.
Geez, that's 20 years ago.
Yeah, I loved, and you had the coolest offices in Kansas City. But anyway, Brad has a degree in business administration with distinction from the University of Nebraska and is formerly a certified public accountant with Ernst & Young. So welcome, Brad. And for our audience, please type in your questions as we go, and we'll work them into the Q&A at the end. With that, I'll turn it over to Brad.
Well, thanks, Gary, and thanks for inviting me to join you for breakfast this morning. It's an exciting time for fiber, and I'm particularly interested in talking about this. You know, quite often we're talking about BEAD or a technology or supply chain issues, and talking about how we impact our communities is really our purpose. So thank you for the topic. Thank you for what we're doing. Real quickly on ALLO, you can see we started in Western Nebraska 20 years ago. After I left Birch and our 100% of our customers fired Southwestern Bell, I just remembered the tagline from 20 plus years ago. Wow, when you think about it, I've been doing this for more than a quarter of a century. So I started when I was like 8 or something like that. But anyway, we started in Western Nebraska 20 years ago, really as a business phone company, and then had pushed across the state into Colorado and now into Arizona. I think you said that we were in 35 communities. I think we've approved another 5 or 6 or 7 since then, and are continuing to expand. We have about 1,300 employees, and one thing that's a little unusual is we have about 450, 500 of them are in our construction organization. We do most of the construction ourselves, and that's a big push. But after the construction is done, then we operate. And we operate across business, governmental, residential, usually get a little bit higher market shares in business and governmental, and just a little bit north of 50% market share in residential. So that's what we do. It's a ubiquitous build of communities, and then provide service, everything from enterprise business through government, small business, and residential. And that's really what I want to talk about today. Is our goal is to change the ecosystem. What I mean by the ecosystem is how hospitals work with their patients, how schools work with their students, how businesses work with, it used to be customers, but now it's their work from home situation, as I'm looking at Gary in what I assume is his home, not his office, or is both today. So next slide, please. We have 4 core values here. I'm probably not quick enough to remember a mission statement and those types of things, but we have 4 core values. It's to be honest, hassle-free, exceptional, and today what we really want to talk about is being local. And I believe that the telcos of the 70s and 80s really had it right, where you had a local GM that was on the city council, was really part of developing that community. The people that worked at the telco were leaders, coaching Little League baseball or involved in the nonprofits, etc. There was that way of working together that changed communities. And as margins got tighter, I would contend networks started to age, and we were trying to squeeze more out of an old network. we let, and I'm a former CPA, I love saying former, but you know, we let the spreadsheets run our companies, not people. And we got tighter and tighter. And of course, a spreadsheet will always say, close your local office, become less involved in your community, because where else are they going to go? Well, now that there's fiber overbuilders and others investing, it's a more competitive environment now. So it's all about being local. We take it on a scaled setup to be local. You know, it's led by marketing, but everybody gets involved. Whether you're, you know, in a part of our drop crew, part of our construction crew, an installer, a CSR, whatever, you get involved in the local world. And, you know, just last year we participated in, you know, more than 500 events, and we sponsor things. Yes, because of that, we receive a bunch of awards, you know, best of the community awards. And I don't think we've ever received one once and not received it every year. So not every community does those awards, but you know, that's how we do it. And then we also offer great service, and PC Mag continues to say we're one of the fastest ISPs and that. But so you've got a great network, you've got a great group of people, and then you have a corporate culture that says, hey, we want to be involved and we want to change things. And so now I'm going to dial up specifically to Lincoln. Lincoln's the 70th largest community in the United States, 300,000 people roughly. And we've done a ubiquitous build there, pretty much, you know, all parts of the city, business, governmental, residential, low income, high income, new builds, old builds. And today, you know, we're just sitting at just under 50% residential market share. It's and we use market share. We use census households as our denominator, so it's true market share. And so once you get to that point where you're the dominant provider in a community, you're doing great things, you're winning some awards and all that, then how are you impacting the next 30 or 40 or 50 years? Because our fiber is going to last that long. So we believe, one, nonprofits shouldn't be paying for fiber. They shouldn't be paying for their internet connection. They've got to raise money and do great things, whether it's helping new immigrants to the community or lower income areas or other people with challenges, veterans, all those types of things. So we did a program where we were going to give 75 nonprofits free gig internet for 10 years. Well, that was an agreement we did with the city of Lincoln just to really lean into things. Well, we said, why stop there? So we're well beyond 80 nonprofits right now, and we're really moving nicely along that. And what does that mean? Well, we connect them, we enable them, but we really try to get our people involved too, because we want our teams to get involved with the Humane Society or the Heart Association or whatever it is, so that they make a difference. Now we're going to talk about schools. From our start, the schools were some of the first that signed up with us. The first that we did E-rate, hosted PBX, layer 2 Metro Ethernet, connection to Network Nebraska and other locations. But it has continued to evolve from there. And that the pictures you're seeing at the left, before I move on specifically to Rabble Mill and the Bay, is some events we sponsor. But one of them I like to point out is we center on education and music, and you can see a couple of the music things there. But we host a free concert in front of our office on Wednesdays nights during the summer. It was an idea of a way to blend the community around us together. We never thought how big it would get. Today we get about 800 to 1,000 people every Wednesday night. There's local coffee shop that's down the street or down in the same building as us. They provide the alcohol and food and those types of things. We handle the bands and the entertainment, and it's all free. The food, I guess they get to pay for, but it brings the community together so that people who would normally not get together can experience and hopefully break down some of the divisiveness of our society. If you go to the next slide. Now let's talk about the Bay. So Mike Smith, who's in the lower left-hand corner here, quite often we're doppelgangers. We look about the, well, maybe not. He's got long hair and tattoos, and he's about 15 years younger than me, but we grew up in the same town. And he has this passion for skateboarding and some other things. I'm friends with a lot of engineers and that, and he's friends with Tony Hawk. Matter of fact, I was in a promo video with Tony Hawk, which was kind of fun. But he started the Bay as a place for at-risk kids that are having some challenges to go. They love to skate and to stay there. Early on in Lincoln, he was trying to teach the skateboarders to not be a problem downtown. And so they figured out that handing out socks to homeless people, clean socks, dry socks, were one of the real needs. So they developed a relationship that escalated. A couple of the skateboard kids said, "Hey, Thanksgiving's coming up. Where are these guys going to eat?" Well, I don't know. So they, raised money. The kids did to then host a Thanksgiving dinner. Well, it escalated from a community place to now a school. And we do a lot of work with Lincoln Public Schools, a lot of work with the schools across the state of Nebraska. And then they had a dream of saying, hey, these kids, they're creative, they learn differently, they come from all socioeconomic areas, but there's risk that they'll fall out of the normal path of school. So they said, hey, let's start a school. My wife and I, Mike's kind of, I don't know what the term is, convinced us that anything he do is going to change society. So we were the first investors in it, and then many other corporate people around us, including ALLO and some of our investors at Nelnet, all dove in. And I think we raised $3 million to start this school. Well, first classes started this last fall. There's about 60 kids in. It'll grow to 100, maybe 200 kids. And what our goal is to change these kids' path in life. They have an indoor skate park. That's their PE, if you will, portion. But they're teaching these kids to, the saying is, find your grind. While you like to take TikTok videos or social media or play music or those types of things, those are all great. But how are you going to make enough money in your 8 to 5? How are you going to find your grind to do what you like so that you contribute to society? And then if you can't make money on your passions, you do that after hours until then finally it becomes hopefully your business long term. So it's teaching responsibility. It's teaching some very creative things, some things like working with video technology, support for music and those types of things. But it's really saying, hey, you got to have your 8 to 5 too. You've got to have your grind. And I love that thought process. So the kids can learn in a different manner. It's accredited by Lincoln Public Schools, and that was an awesome partnership. Very difficult to put together this new way of thinking with a traditional public education. And I think it's working very well. So ALLO, we dove in, of course, free internet, free other services. We help raise money. We participate in a lot of different things, but we're changing some kids' lives. And that's what's important, is just seeing how kids who couldn't sit in a normal class can come in here and participate, not only succeed, but thrive. And if college is their path, there's a great path to college. It's right on the edge of the UNL, University of Nebraska at Lincoln. If they've also got a great relationship with a couple of the community colleges, or they're learning some of our skills, skills to eventually become customer service experts, or work in our splicing or install teams. And so there's a nice path there. That's a little self-interest. I don't know if any of them will end up coming and working for us, but hopefully we're part of their grind. And so this is just one example. I could go across some of the smaller communities and others of how we dive into things. This is one of the things I'm particularly passionate about. But in the end, we try to help out. We make technology friendly. Obviously, these kids can use our technology better than I can, and it's a great way. Whether it's the concert series, helping kids, being local is really our purpose. Our purpose is to, build, connect, and support gigabit communities. And in the end, this is part of the ecosystem that I think as corporate citizens, we have to participate in. But what's more is, it's a whole lot of fun to participate with these kids and see how they learn and how they thrive. And that maybe being a little bit of an engineering geek style is pretty cool, because their grind is really our future. And let's celebrate some people who learn differently, interests maybe are a little different, and like music and sports and other things. There's a lot of mix here, but our future, the fiber future, is really tied to these very creative kids. So that's all I really had to talk about today. It's our passion. It's a lot of fun. And our team does a great job of supporting, leaning in. We show them what fiber is. We show them what our job is. And, it's really interesting watching the kids go through. About 90% are really engaged. I'd love to say it was 100%, but I think we've all had kids, and my kids were never 100% engaged either.
Well, Brad, this is awesome. So, I love that, find your grind. I think that's a fantastic philosophy. And it sounds like the Bay is really doing that and helping kids find their grind. So you guys donate a gig of connectivity and the works, I guess, to this school, and as well as 80 other nonprofits. But you also leverage ACP, the Affordability Connectivity Program, so they can get free internet at home. Can you talk a bit about kind of what you're doing in school, how that kind of then works in their home life, and being able to provide that opportunity?
Yeah, actually, we give 10 gig to this school just because it's especially interesting to us. But yes, we also participate with the ACP program. And any government program has some bureaucracy. It needs to have some bureaucracy. It needs to be, the governmental leaders, they get criticized when they waste money, and then they get criticized when it's kind of hard to sign up. And so we try to smooth out that process for them, make sure that, again, the ecosystem is tying together. ACP program, we have a little north of 3,000 people on the ACP program right now. We're very interested and as a matter of fact, I'm reviewing today a letter going out to all the government leaders within the 3 states we operate, to remind them that, hey, this is good. I don't care if you're red or blue. It's good to have people connected. It helps the economy. It helps people eliminate the digital divide, those types of things. And so we dive into that. Now, I don't want to imply that the only kids involved in this are lower income. There's also some people kids who have some challenge in the normal learning environment, or not even just a challenge. This is their passion. This is what they're really interested in, and they can thrive rather than being, on the football team or girls basketball team or whatever, or maybe in, this club or that club. This is what they're interested in, and so it's a mix. There's a lot of the kids, and really where the school is located is in a more economically challenged area, but ACP is an important part of that, and finding a way to get them connected at home so that they can do schoolwork is very important.
Well, absolutely. And, it's just great to see, as you say, find the grind and being able to have an environment that allows people to be successful, the young people, because they might not fit in the traditional cohort that we've been using since the industrial age. So one of the questions that came in is, where were you, where's your company and your fiber growth when you started offering the free internet? Now you're up to what, 75, 80 nonprofits. So, I mean, did that start from day one, or did you have to get to a certain level of success where you can start saying now it's time to get back? Or
No, it started from day one. I think the Midwest Theater in Scottsbluff, Nebraska in 2000 and late 2005, early 2006 was it was a community theater that was down the street from our first CO, and they needed some help, and I said, hey, here's some internet, don't pay us. Well, then they added voice and some other things that they paid for, and I think we've given free internet to them for 18 years. Now, what's sprung out of that? Well, a lot of corporate donors. It's almost like giving with a purpose, even though that wasn't the purpose. A lot of the corporate donors to that theater said, wait, who's this new group? And they're giving internet, and wow, the internet's great there. Maybe this, because back then we were negotiating with people whether, a T1, data T1 was better than a 10 meg circuit on fiber. Well,
so it became a marketing campaign kind of.
Yeah, I'm a big believer that good things happen when you do good things. And so I can tie a direct line between some of the large giving groups into that theater, and then we ended up doing their corporate work. And so that worked very well as around schools. And we've got something coming with EduRoam later this summer that I think is going to be a game changer. We're really focused on eliminating the digital divide. I didn't mention that in the presentation, but hang on, August is going to be a big announcement time for us.
Well, that's great. And, part of, I guess, your core values being local, how do you do that when you're, like now in over 40 communities in 3 states? And so what's the secret sauce to being local?
The main thing is, I grew up in a small town. Well, actually, I grew up on a farm, and I went to a rural school in a town of 36 people, no zeros. And so I believe in small towns, rural, those types of things. And what we've done is, as we've gotten bigger, we've tried to decentralize a lot of things. Across our organization, our products are the same, our pricing's the same, generally the same. How we do business, our redundancy, those types of things, those are made on a corporate level. But we try to push local to the local level, and we're just now introducing GMs that each will have between 8 and 10 communities that are part of their role is, okay, who was at that event? How was ALLO represented at that event? Do we see the logo across that event? Are we making a difference? There's been interesting things over the time. I remember it was in the late 2000s. There was a big snowstorm in a town, North Platte, Nebraska, and we had bucket trucks, and we had we really couldn't do any work, but we could help people clean up and get trees out of their driveway and those types of things. And it was an interesting thing because the accountant in me said, "Ooh, that could be workers' comp issues, that could be all this other stuff." And then finally, much like donating, I said, "What's our role? What's our responsibility?" And yeah, I approved it, but our team was already doing it. They were like, "Hey, we're going to help our neighbors."
Exactly.
It was a great learning experience for me to say, "Hey, you got to be careful. Obviously, we're not going to mess with electric lines and those types of things, but do the right thing and help people out and be part of the community." And so pushing things down really makes a lot of sense. We have local sales offices, and those people usually that are first impression specialists, their passion is the community, and so
Right.
they're driving some things. We encourage people. We've got people who are city council members and heads of chambers and all those types of things that work with us and are part of our team. That's what we
Well, Brad,
want.
congratulations on building a culture where you guys are involved with all your communities. Hey, I really appreciate, hearing that everything that you and ALLO are doing for these communities you serve across these 3 states. And thanks for joining us today. I look forward to getting back together next Wednesday. We'll be discussing best practices to deliver top net promoter scores for Bluebird Network with Mike Morey, the president and CEO of Bluebird Network, the communications infrastructure and operator of 2 data centers with nearly 11,000 miles of fiber in the Midwest. So you're not going to want to miss that. We'll see you guys again next Wednesday. Thanks, Brad. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Gary.